So the topic today was going to be talking about marketing technology. And that's a loose theme. We can do with that what we want, but what we found is these sessions, if we give them a little more focus, tend to be more useful and be a little more attractive to people. So, but we don't have to be limited by that. But I think the what was it? Maybe 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 7-9 years ago, marketing automation was a big thing, and a lot of people were jumping into this and that. And these days, before that, social media was a big topic. These days, there's so much technology available to help you do almost anything you want. Obviously there are ad servers, there's you name it, and then the subject of Kathy Greenler Sexton's whole conference is sort of technology around providing recurring subscription charges and credit card processing and that sort of thing. So entire conference is devoted to just one piece, and then CRMs, how you make use of that. So and anything goes. Anybody have any pressing issues they're dealing with, or any great tech successes that they've had recently, either talking about individual pieces, new tech that you've added that's like, wow, this is great, or even larger multiple pieces, integrating pieces, whatever. Anybody have any particular specific challenge you're facing, or specific successes we can celebrate with you and learn from? What about Helen?
Yeah, sorry, I've got one. I'm not sure if I can share much useful insight on it yet, but we've just started looking closely at advocacy tools. So when someone registers for an event or buys a membership, there are certain tools you can use that basically, as soon as you've bought something or registered for something, you get a little message that says, do you want to share this with your network? And Ingo is one of them, Leanin is another. I'm interested to hear if anyone's used those. So it's basically, it takes your transaction action and it links that to your social accounts, and it sends out, it's got some clever ways of putting together some artwork that says basically, I'm attending this event, or and it has some branding in it. So pre-populated branding, pre-populated templates. It will say, like, I'm speaking at this event. It will automatically create the artwork, automatically create this LinkedIn post, for example, and then send it out, post it on LinkedIn. And we believe that a lot of events businesses are having great success with these in terms of growing their, especially as emails aren't doing so well at the moment, in terms of a lot of companies. Some companies are. We're seeing some really strong engagement with some email stuff that we're doing, and actually some others really poor engagement. It's really strange. Some are very high, some are low, but overall I'd say in general email engagement is dropping. So obviously we're looking at ways of supplementing that with other tools and channels, and this seems to be one of those that's a little bit underused, and there are these two particular tools that we know of, and I was interested if anyone knows of any others or have used these tools before.
So that's something you would get a link to on, like, the confirmation page that says, let your contacts know about.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to find, let me just find the website addresses for these two tools. The things that we used to do, we're doing quite manually. So we were creating like speaker cards, and we've always been doing this stuff, but we've been doing it really manually. So I'm just trying to find the website addresses, and these tools basically mean that you can do them in a more automated way, and more like at scale. So this is one of them. The other one is Ingo. They don't work with anyone who's not got more than 10,000 registrations a year. They're quite expensive for a small business. Big business, they're fine. But Lean In, they're similar to Ingo. We think Ingo is a bit better in some ways, not better in others, but actually Lean In works with the smaller businesses. It's a little bit more accessible. So I was just interested if anyone has experience working with those tools or has found similar tools, because they seem to be quite powerful based on what we've seen.
I was going to ask you, Helen, about the cost. You mentioned the first one was quite expensive. I was just curious, how much do they typically charge, and how do they charge? I guess is really
the minimum you can spend on Ingo is $18,000 a year, and that's broken up into monthly payments. I think Lean In is something like 400. Ingo is a US based company, and Lean In is UK based. Lean In is something like £400 a month. So, as I said, Ingo only deals with organizations that can promise kind of 10,000 registrations. You know, that makes it worthwhile. It's like $1.50 every time someone shares something or whatever it is. I'm not familiar with all the detail because I had another member of my team looking at all of this in the detail.
I love the concept. I have noticed more and more websites, just consumer retail websites, where you go and it will say Bruce R just placed an order, or that'll drift across the screen or whatever, just to create that sense. And this seems like a variant of that. I could see, if we could tweet out or send out on LinkedIn that to your connections that you've just subscribed to our service or whatever.
It's mostly used for speakers, actually.
Speakers
who want to say they're speaking at an event, or a sponsor or an exhibitor.
Right. Anybody I love the concept, but I don't have any experience. Doesn't seem like anybody's itching to say they've had any experience, but it sounds like an interesting tool.
Hopefully I can have some results for you in a few months.
Well, that'll be great. We'll revisit this. I am thinking that there's so much going on in the marketing tech space that I feel like we should revisit this a couple of times a year. So we'll come back to this, Helen, and hear how things look after a little after you've seen more of the full cycle. Let's see. What about well, I know that Lisa, I know you use Salesforce, and do you still use, was it Marketo that you use or used to use?
We use Pardot. So
Pardot.
Yep. Right now, just drilling into the systems and learning how to maximize them. It seems like you start off with what you think is going to be a simple project, but as you peel away layers, it's one more thing. And especially I don't know if you guys, but we've got sales and Salesforce and Pardot that connect and speak really well to each other. And then if you want to add in some information from the website, well, that's another little complication and all that. So what we thought was going to be a fairly simple update to our Pardot scoring program has blossomed into a much larger project in discovering how our website is laid out, and assuming that some of the things that we wanted to track within Pardot were set up correct, easily to be able to do that. Well, we just had a meeting yesterday. We're going to have some programming behind the scenes to help us, which it's just, it's always a learning process, and seems to uncover more things. But I'm happy to report what we're going to put in place is actually going to get us further down with another project that we had. So it's it's going to serve a couple of uses, but it's also painful for this updated scoring project that, we've been working on for almost a year now. So it's time to really get it done and implemented. So
But I think I speak for all of us when I say we admire the unbelievable level of optimism that you had. You had an expectation that this might be a relatively quick and simple update to your scoring. I don't know if what you were smoking out there or what, but
it is Portland, so
but that is I think that's great. So will this kind of help you leverage Pardot to another level?
Yeah, it's this year really want to focus on more of lead gen for the sales team, as far as not necessarily, obviously we want to grow our marketing list and have brand new names, but it's also highlighting for them more real-time people that are interacting that might be warm. And so putting in ways that we can capture that information from the website based on meetings we've had with sales, getting their feedback on what they think indicates someone that they would want to reach out to. And so putting that into place. So that's what we've been working on to really support the lead gen efforts that we need to hit this year. Nice.
Yeah, Bruce.
Lisa, I'm curious in terms of who's spearheading that integration or that update. I've been in places where it's sort of someone's secondary job and that never works. And so I'm just curious, did you create a job for this or it just became sort of your database or sales guru's full-time gig?
It is part of the spearheader is our digital marketer who's responsible for the emails and lead gen is basically where he's focused. So he's the one sending out the Pardot emails and, researching, getting new lists. So it's in he's the driver of it. And then we bring in our tech team, like we did yesterday to set us straight on a few things. So, but he liaisons again with the sales team, also just checking, marketing's assumptions. Are we on the right field? And, but he's the responsible for driving it.
Yeah. Thanks.
And so this will, it's some new combination, or we'll watch more what emails are opening, what they're clicking on, what pages they're clicking on, time of, if they stay on this product page for more than a minute, they, whatever, that sort of thing.
And it's more, sales, our scoring model was giving scores for, visiting pages, which is great. But, in sales world, those are tire kickers. They want those people that are looking at that sample report that took the time to look at that, so really focusing in and highlighting scoring based off of that into the areas. And obviously demo requests are a no-brainer, but a few pages that marketing wouldn't necessarily highlight, but to them it's ones where they wanted to place more importance. So scaling those. So it's going to be interesting, and hopefully we'll see some fruits of it. And then with that, we're going to be able to reset the scores so that we get a nice clean break, and should be able to really measure how effective that's going to be going forward.
Yep.
I have a question for Lisa. Lisa, if you were to look back and think, if we were to start this again, what would we do differently to try and speed it up? And I'm guessing one of the things might be kind of spending more time working out the requirements of all the different stakeholders and mapping those out. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the part that was missed, I think, was definitely the meetings that we had with the sales team and getting their feedback on what was important was great. And so I think what we missed was just also doing that sanity check on before starting all the little different parts of it, checking on the technical side as far as the integration, knowing that we have to be that connection with the website. So I think we didn't necessarily vet the technical side of what we needed to do to make sure that we were going to be able to accomplish what sales wanted. So I think there was just some assumptions made, just because the website management and setup is a little bit in a different area. So Kevin not having that familiarity with that and just assuming. So now we're having to backtrack a little bit. So I think just a little bit more, to your point, the stakeholders getting the tech in and doing the sanity check at the beginning, because they could have been working on this solution in tandem with some other things that we were working on. I think if we would have taken the time to do that.
One of the things, just the point that I like to make, that we have the same setup, Lisa. So we are a Pardot Salesforce.
Okay.
I came on board probably about 2 months after that conversion had happened. They'd gone over from Infusionsoft. So I think just as a general comment, I know that, like, you know, obviously one of the things I found is that I came from kind of the old legacy kind of quick fill background, and we're in like a B2C selling subscription products in the financial publishing side, essentially similar to Ed. So we found that what I found with Salesforce is that it can be very powerful, but it really needs a lot of customization. It's not designed as a subscription management program. It's designed as a CRM that's going to suit like a bunch of people's needs. So yeah, I feel your pain. I don't necessarily have any. So I just want to let you know that I sort of have a love-hate relationship with it. So if we can connect in any way and help each other out, that would be that'd be good. I'm not really the person who's involved in the technical side, but I understand a lot of how it kind of sort of fits together. Another thing I'd just like to say as well is just as kind of a, you know, the power of this kind of community in that same vein is that I actually was able to reach out to Mary Eisner, and she is a Salesforce person. She understands it very well. And just through kind of the Guild Renewd thing, I saw her make a comment on something and we connected, and she was very generous with her time and happy to jump on a call and walk me through her setup. Just wanted to kind of give a shout out to her and this community for that help as well.
Nice, and she's been very active. And I'm seeing Helen's note about a general consensus of what CRM works best at. Nancy and I just got back from attending a wonderful Renewd International meeting in London that Helen put together and ran. Thank you, Helen. Well done. I know Nancy can speak to this in detail, which I can't. But we were hearing a lot about HubSpot in that room, and I've been in more conversations in the US where I hear about Salesforce than HubSpot. But I mean, certainly those are, you know, surprise, surprise, those two are strong contenders there. You know, there are obviously plenty of others, but
I can speak to HubSpot.
Yeah.
We've had great luck with it, actually, and it's we tie in from ePublishing, who manages our website. HubSpot is our automated marketing system. And within HubSpot, we don't use Salesforce. We actually use their CRM, their sales management tool.
Yep.
And I have to say that the workflow setup from our website to HubSpot, which then delivers an automatic note to one of our sales team, has worked flawlessly. It's a really simple workflow setup that tech people don't need to get involved in. Our marketers actually do all of that setup. So we've had, you know, really good luck with that combo in terms of getting, you know, active people on our website to the right salesperson on our team.
oh, nice. And Nancy, I see your hand up.
Sharing that, how long have you been using HubSpot as our CRM, and are you using them for your email marketing tool as well?
I'm sorry, Nancy, were you directing that to me? I couldn't catch the beginning.
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We do use HubSpot for our automated marketing, and we've been doing the HubSpot workflow, gosh, for 4 years, I
Oh,
would
okay.
say. A long time.
Yeah.
And are you using anything in conjunction with that for your recurring billing or fulfillment?
We're still using QuickFill
Okay.
for our billing and you know, invoicing and renewals.
And for the accounting.
Yes, our accounting has to be very specific.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Wow. And so what about What about, obviously Salesforce, I believe, owns Pardot, right? And they own Sales Cloud, which used to be Tech Target. Obviously HubSpot has its own emailing capabilities. For people in our industry, are ESPs gonna get squeezed out here? I mean, it seemed like for a while, like Real Magnet was before they were acquired, were very much moving towards marketing automation, but it seems like the ability to tie into a CRM more seamlessly, like what you were just describing, Cindy, seems so advantageous that why would I use Constant Contact if I now have to worry about, instead of their engineers worrying about keeping that integrated with the CRM, now I have to be worrying about it.
I think one of the barriers to say HubSpot is that it's not cheap.
Yeah.
It's very expensive, especially if you are, a large emailer, which, that is common for a lot of people. And there's one kind of issue with HubSpot that's kind of maddening, that we still have to use whoever Real Magnet has morphed into. I can't remember their name. Sorry, right off the.
Me neither. Yeah.
But if you like, we have our customers that we mail to, that open, that use. We're very careful about cleaning our list. But if that name, even an opener, a user, or actually appears on another list somewhere in the HubSpot world, that may be for Coca-Cola or some consumer brand that they're ignoring, we cannot email that person.
So I've heard this before. HubSpot has a universal opt-out list, regardless of who is being. Yeah, which I gotta say,
it's insane. Like we go to them and say, look, and we say, you see our data, our data, Joe Smith is opening, our emails, and they're like, sorry, out.
Yeah, that just sounds like the stupidest fucking thing I've heard of.
I totally agree with you.
Sorry to jump in. I don't think that, I have to say, I don't think that's what we've experienced.
Interesting.
It's my experience. I'm going to just drop a little note to my HubSpot guru of gurus and my team and ask her if that is, just ask her about that, if that's okay.
Because what we've had to do is pull those people off and put them back on Real Magnet and have a separate email path for them, which is nuts,
Sounds like fun. So
it's very much fun.
Helen, if you can find that and add that to Guild, this is for those of you who aren't on Guild, this is that much more incentive to be there. We can continue this conversation there. That would be huge. I have heard that from other people. So if it's a misunderstanding, it's not unique. And Nancy, I see your hand back up too, so I wanted to make sure we get you.
Oh, I think that's because I never took it down, but I was messaging Cindy anyway. So Cindy, I'll go ahead and ask, with HubSpot, are you using different from email addresses for fulfillment versus your marketing emails, or do you send from just one?
Oops, Cindy,
you're muted.
You're muted.
God, after 3 years, you think I'd figure this out anyway. We do use different froms, and HubSpot also has another, I'm going to call it a channel for lack of a better word, where you can send transactional information. So that's where we send, invoices, renewals. And so there is there's a from for marketing, and there is a from for the fulfillment of the products.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, so you're not rid of a separate ESP because you kind of need you have a sort of outrigger there for questionable stuff. So we'll see. Maybe Helen can help you simplify your workflow a little bit.
That would be huge if we could figure that out. Thank you, Helen.
Yeah. So Yeah, boy, I mean, it is amazing. And I mean, I know, Cindy, it's nice to hear you say that HubSpot seems to be relatively simple to get going. And Helen had added a similar, reinforced that view on the in the chat window. You know, certainly I've heard, we've got 2 Salesforce users here. I've heard lots of challenges about not only setting up Pardot, but setting up Salesforce, although, you know, all of these tools, they, you know, you kind of get out of them what you put into them. It seems like, in spite of what the salespeople, how simple the salespeople make it sound, it's doesn't seem to be that way.
Well, Ed, to that end, I'm just curious. I've got a couple folks I work with whose wallets aren't quite as fat, and they would love to work with HubSpot, but just they can't afford it. So I'm wondering if there's any more cost-effective alternatives out there that people have either used or heard of that might be suitable for some of these folks I work with.
We're all
the silence is deafening.
Well, we all are, you know, burdened with too much money and time, so we don't have that sort of challenge. No, I mean, you know, I do know, you know, it seems like if you go Googling, you can find people that do anything, but you know, you're fishing in a very small sample here for those. Guild might help you find some more people, I would think.
Yeah, I would say, Bruce, just, you know, my perspective about this is whatever tools, the biggest challenge I think about any of these tools is exactly what Lisa was getting at, is the integration that's needed between various components, sometimes not just another tool, but the site. And, you know, at Makota many years ago, we've invested in certain tools at the time appeared to be, you know, the best in terms of ability to integrate and cost. But when it comes to like an email platform, you know, they all have their pros and cons, besides cost and the ability to automate, to integrate. I think those sometimes you got to weigh it all. It's not just about what's cheapest or what has a particular functionality that you like. It's about making it work for your whole system in a way that's cost effective and effective.
And of course the thing, you know, in the early days of the web, it was about integrating once. Right.
Yeah.
But now, of course, you know, integration is because you've got, you know, 4 to 10 different systems you're integrating and relying on a daily basis, all of which are moving targets, all of which have APIs or whatever they now call APIs. I'm forgetting the, you know, that are constantly evolving, and security and hackers who are looking to exploit every little opportunity. So it's become a real special joy.
Or Ed, there's the converse of that where people are hanging on to systems that weren't made for what they're trying to do. So, you know, like fulfillment systems try to make that email system into more of a constant contact HubSpot, or using an email platform as your database. It's maddening. So
yes, I don't know if you saw, Bruce, but Helen has mentioned Active Campaign, which I've certainly heard from, and it's reminding me as you're thinking about, you know, tools. We're talking to somebody in London who was using MemberGate, which I hadn't heard of in a few years, but, you know, a very simple tool that, you know, many of us would find enormously limiting. On the other hand, if you're sort of, you know, looking low budget, it's, you know, that's where a lot of people started out. So, you know, it seems to be one of the sort of quick fill like tools when quick fill was in its heyday 25 years ago. So, and I have heard, I know other people that use Active Campaign. I don't have any personal experience with it. Laura is saying she has a client who uses ActiveCampaign and it seems to be working well. So that's
awesome.
great.
Thank you.
And Laura, I hope you please feel free to chime in by voice as well. I hope you're welcome to participate in as well. Yeah, well, that's a challenge. Bill, thinking about what you're doing, it does sort of beg the question: do people have to have do people have developers on staff, or to keep all of that together? Are you doing that? Lisa, I think you have developers on staff, right?
We have one main technical consultant that we do, but as far as the stuff between Pardot and Salesforce, we have a Salesforce admin on that. So it's more like if we're going trying to connect to the website or stuff, or we have another system that activates our subscriptions on the back end, and so that can be a little tricky. Because not everything talks together. And of course, there's different pieces of customer information in each system. So working to keep that all in sync can be quite the process.
Yeah, and I can't remember what call it was on, but another call, Dan Fink with Money Media mentioned they use a kind of software that at the time was called ETL, which stood for Extract, Transfer, and Load, which I'm now told has shifted to more ELT, which is Extract, Load, and Transfer. It's just the sequence has changed, but it does some of this sort of, I think of it kind of as C-3PO, the protocol droid in Star Wars, that can talk to in a zillion different languages and talk to anything and translate it to others. And it seems like that's what these tools are. And I don't know a lot about them. Dan says it's not cheap. He uses something called Actian, ACTIAN, but it does make it possible to it's a tool for automating some of this integration, but as he said, it's not cheap. So one way or another, you're gonna pay. It seems like, but that's something. It sounds like if we're not familiar with it now, we're going to be probably it sounds like over the next few years, it'll become more common. And that I don't know enough about it to know how revolutionary it might be or not, but it does seem like these systems have all become, there's so many moving pieces now that there does seem to be a great opportunity for some kind of software that can sit in the middle of it and kind of manage the traffic. So it'd be delightful if this lived up to that promise. So what about challenges with existing software? What's holding you back, that you wish you had a solution for, that seems there ought to be a solution for? Maybe we can help you find something. What about other things like, Helen? I loved your comment about the speaker, sort of flagging your social with speaking things, but which is a relatively small compared to CRM or the email service provider kind of tool, but could be enormously impactful, and is obviously a great way to leverage the contacts of speakers and attendees if you set it up that way.
I'd be interested if I can ask another question, if I may. I'm
Yeah.
always intrigued as to what project management tools, if any, marketers are using to manage their, just any projects. It might be a CRM project, or it might, probably more like kind of campaign-based projects. So I know there's kind of, you know, there's monday.com. We use a tool called ClickUp to do all of our project management. I spoke to someone earlier today who said they use a tool called Forecast, but that's more like an agency tool. Are people even using project management tools, or are you just using like spreadsheets and, you know, Gantt charts and Google Sheets and stuff? That's not really a project management tool, you know, proper project management tool, but it works, right? I'm interested to know what people do and if what works best for them.
We use Slack, but I think one of the issues that we have, and I'm sure that, you know, other people face this, is that we people tend to like to use different platforms for communication. So certain people want to use WhatsApp, and some people want to use Slack, and a lot of us prefer email. I find if it's in my inbox, I know I've got to deal with it. So I think that's one of the challenges that we face. So I don't really have any good solutions to that, other than just to say that.
No, we use Slack for messaging, so that's more like the comms side. So we use Slack to chat to each other, but I wouldn't see Slack as a project management tool as such. Like, it doesn't keep track of. Maybe it does.
Like Trello.
Like Trello. Like you have, you know, like Trello, exactly. Like you'd have a project broken down into tasks and subtasks and dependencies and all those. Like Microsoft Project years ago was like the only tool really like that.
Only serious overkill for most people. When you were saying, do people just, you know, are people using a project management tool or just spreadsheets? The answer for us is kind of yes. We use Smartsheet, which is really just a fancy spreadsheet, but it does do things. You can set up, you know, you can get fairly advanced with it, and it will do things like ping people, you know, as deadlines are approaching and that sort of thing. Nancy uses it much more than I do, but it's sort of somewhere in between. I mean, I find when I was at Makota, we used Basecamp, and Basecamp, you know, again, works fine for certain kinds of things, or you know, Trello or other things, but it can be a lot for the casual users to use well. So I don't know. I've been pretty happy with Smartsheet. It is kind of in between. It doesn't, you know, at least to my knowledge.
One of our clients uses Smartsheet to great effect in the way that you described. And I think it's quite easy for non-technical people to use. We use ClickUp, as Laura does. Interestingly, I think it's more of an agency type tool than a in-house tool.
Yep. So does that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say, the reason I asked is I think it's so important. I think this is an area that's often neglected by in terms of marketing effectiveness and marketing impact, is just the ability of marketers to manage projects well. And some of that ability just, you know, is based on the tools that they're using, because they have so many stakeholders in their project. So Lisa had sales and marketing and tech, and one of the main things project management tools does is, apart from kind of helping you organize yourself, is actually involve all the stakeholders in the right way, give them the right level of visibility, give them the right level of accountability, make sure everyone's like, you know, integrate, everyone's aligned, everyone's involved in the right way. And that's where ClickUp is fantastic, actually, because you can, you know, everyone gets involved in exactly the right sequence in exactly the right way at the right time. And the dependencies, you know, if one thing moves, then everything moves, kind of thing, once you program things in. Yeah, so I think that's an interesting area of tech in marketing that is probably neglected, which could probably solve a lot of the other tech problems.
I think you're right. Having been sort of on the marketing side of subscription publishing all of my career, this on the operating side, this is really the first project management tool that I've used over the last several years, and I think you're right. There's well, in the early days, you know, it was done on paper and there was a clipboard hung on a hook on the wall. So that I guess I did have it at some point, but there's been a lot of years where there could have been software tools we were using that we didn't.
And we use one that's with especially our tech team, it's Red Booths. So that's like, if we have, they really use it, and it can be a little overwhelming because it's one where you comment, you have tasks, and you can comment and you can like flag people. And so you can updates on the projects, which can overload your inbox a little bit, but it is nice because you've got it both up in the platform and email notifications mixed in. And that's one that definitely our tech team uses. So if there's anything, a substantial project that's going to involve them, they're like, put it up in Red Booth, then you can kind of see too where it is stacked up with their other projects. So
it does seem like there's specialization, that if you're trying to coordinate marketing people versus tech people, and as we've been hearing, you know, if you're working in an agency where you need to be tracking different clients and, you know, billable time, that's got a different set of, you know, there are different tools focused on each of those different areas. So, and I did, James, although I think, to me, Slack is like another email like tool, not so much, it's more about comms, but I share your concern about, I mean, you know, we use Slack a lot, but there is absolutely a downside that you can, you know, remember that somebody sent you something, not sure if it's email or Slack, not sure which permutation or group it was. So unlike email, where it's all just in your inbox, you now have, you know, I have 40 different inboxes in Slack and it could be in, you know, half of them. So it has its pluses and minuses, although particularly in the remote work from home days, we also use it as sort of the go-to, let's have a quick phone call, video call kind of thing without having to go to meeting and set something up. It's just click and we're talking. So that is kind of nice too. But yeah, Cindy, what about sort of project management with WGC?
We've used internally at FDA News, we used to use Smartsheet, and that was really successful. We used it not only for the marketing side of the house, but also to track editorial projects.
Yep.
Especially the more complicated ones, not so much the newsletters, but books, special reports, things again with multiple stakeholders and multiple, you know, people having to check in. And then we've switched to Monday.com, which is a broader tool used internally at WCG.
Yeah.
Little more difficult than using Smartsheet, but seems to be working. And honestly, still using spreadsheets for a lot of things, you know, kind of the default for most of the marketing tracking, actually.
Yeah. We've made a concerted effort to get away from using Google Docs, but the reality is we still have Google Docs in the portfolio of tools that we use because you know, it's easy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just add, Ed, since you've been gone from Aquota, we've abandoned the base camp.
Yes, yeah.
We don't use that anymore.
Yep.
And maybe we're a little more intense about the project management stuff than some of the rest of you, but we now use the Atlassian suite of products, including Jira, which is a project management ticketing system that integrates with Tempo, which is a timesheet to record time spent on projects, and Confluence, which is the other part of Atlassian's products that is sort of we use for meeting agendas, documentation. You can upload and attach documents to any of these things. So I would say it's probably like the Cadillac of such things. I know that even Jerry's company use Jira and Confluence as well. And I think didn't I hear Linda, that her husband uses that at his work too? I think she's familiar with Jira.
Oh, yeah. Certainly, the Atlassian suite is a pretty commonly used suite of products. But yeah, I haven't used it, but it sounds like it works. I know you've been using it in Aquota for a few years now, right?
Yeah, I think 4 years.
Yeah.
And it goes back to my comment about integration. Using the discrete, we used to use a separate timesheet app, platform, and then there was Basecamp for the project management stuff. And of course, you were doing all the documentation separately in MS Word documents or Excel.
Right.
Having the Atlassian stuff with the integration saves a lot of time.
Yeah. So you're not pulling out files, importing them into a spreadsheet from 3 different tools and having to rationalize them and integrate them and align up the
Yep.
columns and all of that good fun stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you can actually get reports in real time. Yeah. Interesting. So Cindy, you mentioned Monday, and Helen, somebody else had mentioned Monday.com at some point, but so that sounds like, I mean, these tools, I mean, really everything seems to be, it's a balance between ability and complexity, and or capabilities and complexity, and how if I think a lot of project management software seem to get a bad name because one of the first things out there was Microsoft Project, and it was so complex, and they kind of pitched it to the masses instead of pitching it to project managers, and I think a lot of people jumped in and found it way overwhelming, not unlike what happened with sort of marketing automation when Marketo and Pardot and all of those other guys came on. They talked about all the amazing capabilities, and they managed to gloss right over the fact that it took a hell of a lot of work to make that stuff happen. And a lot of people jumped in and never implemented, or Salesforce, used. I think it was it was Makota actually, who was a Salesforce customer for a year and never implemented. And I know that's that wasn't the only group I heard that had that same experience. So. If you're not using something, maybe starting on the low end seems to make sense, and start simple and go more complicated as needs drive it. But so maybe we'll take a look at Monday.com.
I forgot about Microsoft Project.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me what a disaster that was.
I'm sure I went to 3 different. It was the classic sort of problem with using Adobe Creative Suite. Also, if you weren't using this stuff at a frequent level, you go and learn it, and then it was like, oh my God. So, that was a very frustrating experience. Well, we are just coming up on time. I'm sorry we started a little bit late today. Again, we had some technical glitch with Zoom that negated our password. But thank you so much. I've found this a great discussion. It was enormously helpful. This is definitely going to want to make me do this topic from time to time. And my guess is I heard from David Foster, who said he had moved on to doing other things when he got shut out. So my guess is we would have had more people if we had been able to launch this on time. But we'll definitely do this again. And for all of us, let's continue the conversation on guilds, because it's always there. It's a great resource, and it's searchable. It's so you can always find stuff. But that would be great. Thank you all for coming. Anybody have any last thoughts or questions you want us to ponder? All right. Well, we will. Are you raising your hand, Cindy? Okay. All right. Well, goodbye, everybody. Have a great
Thank you.
week, and we'll see you.
Thanks.
We'll see you again
Bye
soon.
now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.